It is one of the great racing weekends of the year. For NASCAR, the longest race of the season, the Coca-Cola 600. It happens right here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. We're going to get you ready with a special edition of Countdown to Green on NASCAR.com. Special thanks to the folks at NASCAR on Fox for loaning us the Hollywood Hotel. With Kyle Petty and Larry McReynolds, I'm Adam Alexander. Good to have you with us on this Memorial Day weekend. Kyle, you won the Coca-Cola 600 back in 1987. I'm curious, is that the shirt you got for winning on that night? Or
that is, and let me just say, we're in the Hollywood Hotel, and I'm not worthy to sit in these seats. Not after the group that sits here on a regular basis. What's wrong with this shirt?
In all seriousness, though.
If you take all these lines, it says TNT.
How nice is it as a driver when you can add to your resume a win in the Coca-Cola 600?
For the group I drove for, it was really cool because I drove for the Wood Brothers at the time. And they had had so much success with Pearson over here and every driver that had ever driven for them. And they had won some races, and I'd won a race or so with them. But we just outlasted everybody, and that's what the 600 was all about, outlasting everybody that last 100 miles, and that's where the Wood Brothers were really good. So I was fortunate to be in a car that could run up front and could outlast everybody. But the 600, at the time you had Daytona, Darlington, Coca-Cola 600. It's a big race. It's always in the top 2 or 3 on everybody's list.
And, Larry, it's a tough race to win, but if you're looking at favorites for this weekend, it's hard to look past the driver that's been on a roll lately, Jimmie Johnson.
Well, it is. When you think about it, back in 2003, 2005, Jimmie Johnson won 5 of 6 races here, and then they repaved this place, and Jimmie Johnson and Chad Knaus felt like they had lost the handle. But watching that All-Star race the other night, looks like to me they found the handle, and they got all their arms and hands around it. He dominated that first segment. He tested for the next 3 segments, and then he led the final 10 laps to get his 3rd Sprint All-Star win here at Charlotte.
It certainly appears the swagger is back when you look at Jimmie Johnson and Chad Knaus in that 48 team. They get Rick Hendrick his 200th win at Darlington a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned the $1 million they got for winning on Saturday night in the All-Star race. The momentum certainly on the side of Jimmie Johnson and that team. Qualifying happened here last night. A surprise on the pole. First-time pole winner, Eric Almirola. How about delivering it to the king in the 43 car? His qualifying speed Thursday night, 192.940 miles per hour. It is his first career pole coming on the big stage. After he wrapped up qualifying, he visited with our Matt Yoakum.
What better weekend to fly the famous 43 Air Force colors on the pole than right here Memorial Weekend? What makes this pole mean the most to you? Is it because of what weekend it really is and your sponsor?
And it's my first one. So right here at home, Coca-Cola 600, my first Coca-Cola 600, and to do it with U.S. Air Force on the car and Memorial Day weekend, everything just kind of lined up. It's really special. And Richard was here tonight, so it's just cool. I mean, there's no other words to describe it, and it's just cool.
When you look at the effort that this team has put in, and then Mike Ford comes on board, and instantly you guys have seemed to gel, is this a good indication of what to expect as we start to hit the summer months?
I hope so. I mean, this racing's all about momentum, and this is a great way to get the momentum rolling. It takes fast cars to run good, and obviously tonight we proved we got really fast race cars at Richard Petty Motorsports. Got both our cars on the front row. So just proud of everybody, all the hard work that goes on back at the shop. I know everybody always says that, but it's true. It takes all those guys back at the shop to be able to do stuff like this tonight. So thankful for all our sponsors, Smithfield and U.S. Air Force, and it's going to be a special weekend.
600 miles, the longest race you will have run in one day coming up Sunday night. What have you done to prepare yourself for the durability and the heat?
Well, I work out. I work out as often as possible, and I do a lot of cardio. So if I'm not prepared by now, it's not going to happen come Sunday. So I think a lot of it's mental, and a lot of it's having a good race car. If you're fighting an ill-handling race car, 600 miles is a long race. So I hope we have a good car. I think it'll be awesome to take in tomorrow and just kind of soak it all up, and then come back Saturday ready to do work and get our car ready for 600 miles.
Special pole night for the Kings boys as Eric Almirola puts the 43 on top.
Matt mentioned it, not only Eric Almirola with a solid qualifying run on Thursday evening, Marcus Ambrose, the team car, going to start alongside on row one. Certainly this is an organization, Kyle, that continues to take steps in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think, he talked about Mike Ford. I think that was big, Mike coming over there, because Mike brings what he knows Denny wants. Mike brings what he knows Joe Gibbs Racing has done. And I think, Richard Petty Motorsports needed that influx from outside. They had lived in their own little world for the last couple of years. So I think that's big. If you go back to Marcus Ambrose, during the All-Star race, he had some incredible starts. Yeah. I mean, he blasted. It looked like Tony Stewart at Homestead. High, wide, and handsome on the outside around everybody to pick up 2 or 3 positions. So I knew he was going to run good. I think Eric was a little bit of a surprise.
In this race a year ago, Larry, we were this close to seeing the long winless streak end for Dale Earnhardt Jr. When you look at 2012 for them and certainly how they ran in the All-Star race last weekend, I think they can be a player on Sunday.
Well, I do, and I just think the confidence that Dale Earnhardt Jr. has right now, we see it in his interview. If you go back to last year when we would interview Dale Earnhardt Jr., the head was down, the hat was pulled down, but now he has swagger in his step. He's completed every lap of every race this year. He's sitting third in the points, 8 top 10s. I think when you just look at the way he's run here in 2012, the way he ran here a year ago when you said about a half of a cup of fuel from winning the Coke 600, and the fact of the weekend he had last weekend during the Sprint All-Star, he won the showdown, came back to finish 5th in the Sprint All-Star race, and they brought that very same car. He would have it no other way, and I don't know that I blame him. I truly think this could be where Junior Nation really has something to celebrate on Memorial Day.
It's been a big week for NASCAR here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Earlier this week, 5 more names called for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Rusty Wallace, Leonard Wood, Herb Thomas, Cotton Owens, and Buck Baker, the 5 names that will be inducted in February, the 2013 edition of the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Stay with us. We're coming back after a break. It's NASCAR.com, live at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Countdown to green on NASCAR.com. Back live at the Charlotte Motor Speedway with Kyle Petty and Larry McReynolds. I'm Adam Alexander. Good to have you with us on this Memorial Day weekend as we get set for the longest race on the 2012 schedule. That would be the Coca-Cola 600. 11 races complete so far in 2012. Greg Biffle leading the championship standings. Safe to say he has been Mr. Consistency when you look at the first third of the schedule.
Well, and I think we actually saw this start the end of last year when they made the crew chief change over there and brought Matt Pusha in. They started running well at the end of last year. Of course, he didn't win a race last year. He comes back to get his win at Texas, you see right there. And he's led the points ever since race number 3. In fact, he started the season off with 3 third-place finishes. I think definitely Greg Biffle, one of the more pleasant surprises so far after 11 races.
Yeah, and like Larry said, I think it started last year. And I think we saw Matt start the last part of last year. If you look at the last 10 races, I really felt like Matt had pretty good chase. Hadn't run out of fuel at Chicago, a couple other things, what happened with him and Vickers at Martinsville. But they were all chasing Carl. What does surprise me about the Roush organization is not that they're up front. It's that Biffle's up front and Matt's up front, but where's Carl? Because I really felt like Carl would pick up exactly where he left off last year.
There have been some surprises early in 2012. One of them, the ascension of Michael Waltrip Racing into the top 10 in points. And in particular, Kyle, Martin Truex Jr., who's been right there to ending that long winless streak.
You know, it's funny. I look at Truex and you see him here talking to Clint Boyer. I think Michael and Rob Kaufman, those guys, I think they made a lot of good decisions over the last 12 to 18 months. Not just over the winter, over the last 12 to 18 months. But I think for Martin Truex, and this is just Kyle Petty's opinion, that bringing in Clint Boyer, bringing in Mark Martin, bringing in drivers of that caliber, they push Martin. I don't think David Ruderman pushed Martin Truex. And I think Martin has stepped up and taken a leadership role and said, hey, this is my team. I'm the first guy you guys hired. I'm the one that's going to lead this team, and I think that's what he's doing on the racetrack.
And I think bringing in Scott Miller from Richard Childress Racing last year. Scott, for the first time, Michael Waltrip Racing has someone that is corralling those 3 teams. He's making those crew chiefs and those drivers and those teams work together. I think that's been a big key to their success. And think about it. Even with the 55 car having different drivers, all 3 of those teams are in the top 12 in points right now.
3 drivers have won 2 races so far in 2012. Tony Stewart, Brad Keselowski, and Denny Hamlin, a driver who nearly won the championship in 2012, struggled a little bit, in 2010, struggled in 2011. They appear to be back.
Well, same thing that I think has happened with some other teams. There's no question, even though Denny Hamlin and Mike Ford had a ton of success, I think they pretty much had run their course. We started seeing it all throughout last year when they only won that one race at Michigan. I think bringing Darian Grubb over there, bringing him into Joe Gibbs Racing, I think that's been huge. I see a lot of confidence in Denny Hamlin right now, and I think they have now they've got that race team back to where they were in 2010.
Another team that's trying to put things together when you look at this stage of the season in 2012 would be Jeff Burton. The last time the 31 team went to victory lane, right here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, October 2008. Let's get his thoughts on the longest race of the year. Here's Matt Yoakum.
Every young kid starting out always dreams of winning a NASCAR Sprint Cup race, let alone a crown jewel event in NASCAR. And Jeff Burton's done it not once, but twice right here at Charlotte. What's it mean for a driver to score one of those magical wins?
Well, this race is so historic. You know, it's the longest race of the year. That makes it special in and of itself. I came here and watched a lot of races as a kid. I watched Cale Yarborough blow up real late in one of these races. If it had been a 500-miler, he would have won. It just means a lot because it is the longest race, and it's a grueling night.
Has the pace changed over the years from an endurance race to more of a sprint race?
Oh, yeah. This, what's going on is as equipment has improved and competition has improved, you have to run hard. You can't ride around anymore. You had to save your equipment. Today, you just run as hard as you can run. The equipment will take it typically, and with the competition, you don't have much choice.
So, new crew chief Drew Blickensderfer, things have gelled really well. How would you characterize the season thus far for you and the 31 team?
Well, I mean, obviously the mile-and-a-half program's been really disappointing. We just haven't run well in those mile-and-a-halves. We're 17th in points, but that's with 3 mechanical failures and a wreck. So, you know, with half of those problems, we're sitting there 14th or 13th in points. So, you know, we've done a nice job of managing, but we got to have some improvement. I'm really happy with Drew. He's done a really nice job. Our performance hasn't shown it yet, but I promise you it will.
Coming off the All-Star race, a lot of pomp and circumstance, now NASCAR's longest day and night. What's your biggest concern about the 600?
How much the track changes and how much the car changes going from the beginning of the race to the end of the race. You've got these huge swings in temperature. It's hot. You're gonna take off. The track's gonna be really slick. It's gonna cool down a great deal. The track's gonna change a lot. Being able to keep up with that's the primary concern.
Well, good luck Sunday night.
Thank you.
Jeff Burton chasing his third Coca-Cola 600 victory.
17th in points is Jeff Burton as we get set to roll with the 12th race of the season. What kind of grade you giving him early in the year, Larry?
Well, I think I see it at Richard Childress Racing across the board. We know that Kevin Harvick is sitting there in the top 10 in points. I think Menard, who's completed a lot of the races this year, he's 13th in points. But there's just something missing with the 31 team and Richard Childress Racing, and it's nothing big. But today, with the way this sport is in the competition, it doesn't take a little to make a huge difference. I see some consistency there. New crew chief with Jeff Burton this year, Drew Blickensderfer, but there's still just a little something missing within that whole organization as they went from 4 teams to 3 teams this year.
Early in the season, everyone's saying, what's missing with the 5 team? Casey Kane came to Hendrick Motorsports. Yeah. Everybody expected them to come out of the gate on fire. That not the case. But 16th in points, 5 consecutive top 10 finishes. What do you think there, Kyle?
You know, I think Casey and everybody, I think Casey put a lot of pressure on himself. And I think a year of anticipation, a year of leading up.
A year and a half,
yeah,
really.
Of leading up to, I'm a Hendrick driver. I'm going to get in this car and I'm going to kick butt. He finished off the year in the Red Bull team, had a pretty decent last 4 or 5 races, thinking that's going to, and I think it's like, my God, I just got to get it all done in the first 5 races. I think after 5 races and 5 really bad races, not that he didn't run well, but had nothing to show for it, it's almost like Casey went home and said, okay, now it's time. Yeah. Let's just start. And he took a step back, and boom, they've moved forward. And that's what I see. I don't see that the team's any different. I see that Casey's different. And I think he's comfortable now, where at the beginning, I think it was nerves and just pressure he put on himself.
And you mentioned pressure. There's got to be a lot of pressure when you go to drive for Rick Hendrick. I mean, the stables aren't bare when you look at Jimmie Johnson and Jeff Gordon and the 9 championships they brought, Mr. H.
Yeah, and Casey Kane said it, especially after what happened at Bristol there about lap 25 of 500 laps. He said, I'm probably just trying too hard, because he definitely put himself in the wrong spot, wrong place, wrong time. Several of those races races earlier, but they've had speed. He has a couple of poles, but now he's stepped up here and sitting with 5 consecutive top 10s, 31st to 16th in points in the last 5 races.
Kane is going to get no sympathy from his teammate Jeff Gordon, who is 24th in the standings and just simply cannot get a break early in the year.
I think even with as many races as we've got to go with Richmond, the problem with where Jeff Gordon's at is they actually have performed well, other than a couple of races like Las Vegas and Darlington. But when you're 24th in points and you're almost 100 points back, even though we've got 14 races to Richmond, all you can worry about now is going out and winning races.
Yeah, and I heard an interesting stat yesterday that said that Brad Keselowski was in the same place, 24th. Now, I don't know how many points he was out of them, but he was in exactly the same place. And Brad got hot and made the chase. But let's remember, how did he make the chase?
Winning races.
Winning races.
That's
exactly.
Right.
So this team, I don't see them getting in on points, but they're going to have to win some races. He can get in on wins because, just as Larry said, he's run well enough to.
That's what I was going to say. We all know driver 24 can turn it on and go on a big-time run and have some momentum when it comes time for the playoffs. We're getting you ready for the Coca-Cola 600. It's Countdown to Green on NASCAR.com. Back live at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and now we welcome in the 3-time champion, defending champion in the Sprint Cup Series, Tony Stewart. Good to have you with us. And I'm really curious because there's no track activity here at the Speedway today, but you got a busy afternoon and evening. What's going on?
Well, it depends on which Speedway you're talking about.
That's right.
There's another Speedway that's just across the street that is covered in dirt that we're going to be playing at tonight with the World of Outlaws. So looking forward to going back over there this afternoon. And been over here today hanging out with our friends from Coca-Cola. So they got the track walk today. They got the quarter-mile cookout, and it's just a big day here at the racetrack. Even though there's no race cars on the track, there's a lot of on-track activity today with a lot of race fans and a lot of people from Coca-Cola.
We were just doing our evaluations of early in 2012. You got to like where you're at from the standpoint you already have 2 wins under your belt. That's a nice feeling, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a luxury that I've not had in my career. I've not won 2 races this early in the season, but the way last season went and seeing how those 2 wins were a playoff spot, that's an insurance policy for us at this point. It's still no guarantee that somebody else that 2 guys couldn't go win 3 races, but for us to have the runs that we had at Vegas and California with a new crew chief, it's pretty encouraging.
Tony, 46 wins in the Sprint Cup Series. You have the 1 win here in an October race back in 2003. But I was reading your quotes earlier in the week. You definitely think about the 1/600 that got away from you back in 2008, a 5.5-second lead with roughly 3 laps to go.
Yeah, and to sit there and know that we had to pit for fuel, there was nothing we could do about it. So, it was very discouraging. I mean, it's a heartbreaker because I think you want to win. You want to win the Daytona 500. You want to win at Indy, and you want to win at Charlotte. That's just everybody wants to win at Charlotte because all the teams are here, all your guys are here, and to win a Coca-Cola 600 is a huge accomplishment.
We talk about the racing, talk about this race, and talking about points and wins. How gratifying is it on the other side? Turn your hat around. From an owner to have put cars in the chase every year, both your cars have been except one, but to already have a win for the 39 car this year, to already be in that position this year, how gratifying is that?
It's unbelievable. And a lot of it is just, it's carrying that momentum and that, all the feelings that we had winning the championship last year. Everybody stayed positive all through the winter. We're riding that wave, and it carried through the beginning part of this season. So Ryan getting his win at Martinsville and us getting our 2 wins already. Danica having a great run at Darlington.
Yes, she did. She really did.
I think it shows the depth of our program. So I'm really proud of, from the Carner side, I'm proud of where we're at right now. But as we all know, you cannot stop. I mean, you always have to keep pushing to be better because everybody is. So if you slow down just for a little bit, you're going to get yourself behind. So it's a constant work in progress. But I'm very proud of where we are right now.
Cool.
Tony, as we walk through the garage, Jared, people certainly talking about the Coke 600 coming up, and they talked about what went on in the Sprint All-Star race, but all of a sudden now we're starting to hear all the buzz and all the talk about a race that's very special to your heart, the Prelude to the Dream coming up here Wednesday week. Big event, just keeps getting bigger.
June 6th, and it keeps getting bigger and better every year, and we got a little bit of a curveball this year with the Pocono tire test. So, but I think if anything, it really makes me even that gives me that much more pride because there's so many of the drivers that are going to the Pocono test that are having to fly back on Wednesday after that and then go back and run on Thursday again. And
Danica's going to run the Prelude this year.
Yeah, that's going to be. I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to. I mean, I can barely see out of my car, so I'm trying to figure out how they're going to get her to see out of her car and get her to where she can reach everything. But we got a good car for her to drive and a good crew, so it'll be fun. It's always fun to take somebody to Eldora that hasn't ran dirt and hasn't ran a late model and hasn't ran at Eldora for the first time and watch how quick they adapt. It really shows why they are at the level of racing they're at.
Yeah, okay, you bring up Danica. Now we're talking about Danica. Two-part question. How many people told you were crazy when you put Darlington on the schedule? Okay?
Everybody.
Yeah, but in hindsight, I watched her here in practice yesterday. She built a lot of confidence in herself at Darlington, and it showed as the race went on. And you look at that in retrospect and you think, man, you're a genius. That's exactly where you should have taken her. Because no matter how she ran, she became confident as a stock car driver, and it's carried over to here. Have you seen that?
Absolutely. I mean, I went up on Friday to watch the nationwide race, and she ran a really good race there, ran 11th. And in the Cup race, I got to see her a couple times when we were coming around, but there were parts of the race where I was coming off of 2 or coming off of 4 and could see her in the middle of 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 to whatever side we were on, and then all of a sudden she started getting further away. I mean, she picked it up as the race went. I think we all were prepared for the worst, but hoping for the best at Darlington. I know the nationwide side, they brought 3 cars. They had a car sitting outside. We also had a 3rd car sitting outside. So to think, I mean, everybody, because Darlington's a tough place to learn. I mean, it's a
tough place to get out of the way.
And who would ever believe we would have had 172 caution-free laps to start that race?
I was very appreciative for the break when I got it. I needed a lot of help in my race car at that point. But, to see how well she did there and how patient she was, and patience is the biggest thing that you can't teach. It's instinct, and like you say, I mean, it's one thing to race by yourself at Darlington, but when you're racing with 42 other cars, the things you have to do to work with each other to keep from slowing your lap times down, that's stuff that you can't really teach. It just has to come natural. And like you said, when she came here yesterday, you can see that she's got that confidence started, and she's just so good at processing information. And she'll make a mistake, and she'll tell you what she did, and she'll ask or tell you what she thinks that she needs to do different, and you shake your head, because most of the time she's spot on. She knows what that adjustment needs to be, and she's gonna pick it up real quick.
In an effort to be fair, I gave Kyle a hard time about his shirt earlier. So I'm gonna tell you, I like the retro Coca-Cola look.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
What?
Kyle's got
You like the 70s, but you don't like the 30s?
Hey, thanks for
There's a
being with
difference
us.
between the 70s and 30s?
We're convinced that's the shirt he wore after he won the 87 race.
Yeah. That's all I had to wear home that night.
Good luck tonight.
Just somebody gives me my clothes, so I have no fashion sense. I would sit there and go, man, that's a cool new shirt.
See? There. Thank you very much. And tell them that if you're prepared, you don't need notes.
That's right.
That's right.
I'm in trouble
true
then.
professionals.
Larry and
All the professionals need are a fresh Coke and talent.
That's it. Thank you very
All you got
much.
to do is do your deal.
And with that, I think we better go to a break, right? Tony, thanks for being here. Good luck this weekend. We'll see you for more Countdown to Green on NASCAR.com as we roll on this Memorial Day weekend from the Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Welcome back to Charlotte Motor Speedway, special edition of Countdown to Green here on NASCAR.com. And talking about 90-degree plus heat here this weekend. I'm Larry McReynolds with 1987 Coke 600 winner Kyle Petty. Kyle, when you won this race and the number of years that I was a part of it, we looked at it as truly an endurance race, 100 miles longer than any other race we would run. I'm just not sure that it's viewed that way. I think maybe the bigger story now is this transition from daytime to night.
I agree. We used to talk about it. NASCAR, we had a 600-mile race. No other division has a 600-mile race. Any division that went over 500 miles, it was called an endurance race, and they used 2 drivers to run the race. One would drive 3 hours, and the other one would drive 3 hours. We ran this thing, and remember when this thing used to last 5.5 hours? I mean, it was a long race. Equipment. You had to worry about equipment failure. You had to worry about all that. And that's not a story anymore. We heard Jeff Burton earlier talk about the equipment is so good that it doesn't fail anymore. Drivers have to be in shape. That's part of it. But going from a slick racetrack and understanding how much this racetrack changes from daytime to nighttime is what really puts you in the race. How many times have we seen the guy come over here and lead the early part of the race, and then he's lapped when it goes green or when it gets dark, or vice versa?
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that Ray Evernham and Jeff Gordon was so good at in the late 90s when they won this race several times. Of course, Jeff got his first win here back in 1994, and I think it's where Chad Knaus and Jimmie Johnson is, even when you're up there leading and you know you're going to go through those major transitions of the daytime to dusk and then dusk to night, that even if your car is driving good, there's so much anticipation that you've got to take big swings at that race car because you know it's only going to change even if you're up there leading the race.
Even if you're up there, even if you're checking out on the field by 0.2 a lap, you know it's going to change. And what Jimmy and Chad do that is really phenomenal is they build adjustability in their car. These cars are so hard to adjust, but they never, as they do it, they're patient with it. They wait, then they change, and then they get on their cycle. So they're patient in the beginning, and then they make swings at it.
And then the other problem is the fact that all of the practice is during the daytime. The only real data you have is possibly from the Sprint All-Star race last Saturday night. All right, we know that maybe that extra 100 miles does not mean that much now, Kyle, but as far as the race car, but the driver. I know it's going to be nighttime, but it's still going to be hot.
It's going to be hot. And people complain about these cars being hotter than the old cars. And that's a factor. But I'm telling you, man, you get into that mode, and we talk about getting into race shape, and you get into race shape for 500 miles. All of a sudden, you throw that extra 100 miles in here. And, yeah, it's 45 minutes or an hour, and you think, okay, well, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like running a marathon. That first 21 miles, you hear people talk about it, and it's like, yeah, I got 21 in me. It's those last 5 miles that get you to the end that your mind begins to play tricks on you, and your body begins to go. That's the same way it is for a lot of these guys in these cars.
Yeah, Jeff Gordon said the very first Coke 600 that he run was actually in 1993. He said the biggest mistake he made was asking how many laps to go, and they said you still have 330 laps to go. He said it seemed like it was 1,500 miles. Kyle, what about these drivers that are doing the double duty here this weekend? I think about Danica Patrick, 900 miles. And that Nationwide Series race, it is right in the heat of the day, and they're talking about 93, 94 degrees on Saturday.
And it's not an easy race. That's not an easy race. That's a physical race on somebody. And this racetrack is, especially with the Nationwide cars, they carry so much speed through the middle of the corners that you look at those races and you're physically beat when you get out of them. It's tough for somebody. This is a hard double duty. And a hard place to do it, because at the end of the time, it's 600 miles. It's 300. That's a 300. It's 900 miles of racing. Where when we look at other races, you're looking more at 650, 700 miles, something like that. So it is a big deal. And these guys, whether you're Danica, whether you're Harvick, no matter who you are, they're going to have to hydrate. They're going to have to stay on top of how they feel, because how they feel is going to directly relate to how that car runs on Sunday.
Yeah, and I'm going to really quiz my driver after that final practice to make sure that every I's dotted, every T's crossed inside that race car, because you heard Jeff Burton say every lap is like a qualifying lap, and I want all of his focus. I don't want him worrying about is his feet getting hot, is there hot air blowing on him. I want to make sure all of his focus is pretty much on driving that race car.
But, from a driver's perspective, and you know this, okay, it's your job to keep us calm and to talk us down. But how many times...
Then who's going to keep me calm?
Nobody's going to keep you calm, buddy. You got to get that at home before you come to the racetrack, okay? But honestly, how many times, and let me ask you this, how many times have you had a driver and you're running great and everything's good, you never hear anything from the cockpit, but as soon as he gets tired or as soon as something happened, seat's uncomfortable, steering wheel's in the wrong place, my feet are getting hot, I think I got a crush panel out. How many times have you heard that in your career?
Let's see. I started 470 races, probably a good 420 times.
Yeah, exactly.
Kyle, NASCAR continues to make rule changes to try to make it where we can have better side-by-side racing, and these drivers in their cars, they're not so aero-dependent. I don't know that we know the full effect just yet of the rule change that they made headed into the All-Star race. It's pretty much raising the height of those rocker skirts. I think we will learn a lot about it in this 600-mile race, though.
I hope so. I think some guys said some interesting things 3 or 4 races into the season that really didn't come to light for me. until we really got to Talladega, and especially with the 17 and the 16, the two Roush cars. You know, they said they couldn't get hooked up, and Biffle explained it. He said when they changed the nose on the cars this year a little bit, it created a big bubble of air, and instead of being able to drive through that bubble, you push the car ahead of you and pushed it away from you. With the noses and the way we were running them, the car in front of you, when you get to it, that bubble of air, it pushes him away and pushes you in a different direction.
Yeah.
That's just as big on a track like Charlotte. So when you get to that, maybe letting some of that air escape from under the car will deplete that bubble, and these guys will be able to race closer.
And then I truly think that these drivers in these cars with this rule change, I think they're driving different because it definitely changed the downforce on these race cars. It took some of that side force away and took some rear grip away, and I'm not sure that maybe doesn't hurt drivers like Jeff Gordon a little more than other drivers. Jeff does not like a loose race car. We need to take another short break from this special edition of Countdown to Green. We come back, our leader, Alan Alexander, comes back to us. We're going to tell you who we think will win this Coke 600 here later on this evening.
Good to have you with us for a special edition of Countdown to Green on NASCAR.com. Just over 48 hours away from the marathon, the Coca-Cola 600 here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Time now to make predictions on what's going to happen Sunday. Kyle, Larry, what do you think?
I'm pulling for the 17, Matt Kenseth. But it's going to be tough to beat that 48.
Yes, it is. I was just going to say, I think for the 8th time since we've been running the Sprint All-Star race, a driver will go back-to-back, win the All-Star race and the Coke 600. Jimmie Johnson, he's going to do it.
And we all talked about Dale Earnhardt Jr. and how close he was.
Is that your pick?
A year ago. I'm not making a pick.
Make a pick.
Okay, I'll say fire up, Junior Nation. And if you want more Dale Jr., how about tuning in at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time this afternoon? It's Dale Jr. and Danica Patrick, a nationwide chat right here on NASCAR.com. Special thanks to the 3-time champion, Tony Stewart, who dropped by. We wish him well this weekend. For Kyle Petty and Larry McReynolds, I'm Adam Alexander. We'll see you for NASCAR on TNT. It's June 10th at Pocono. Until then, thanks for being with us, and enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, everybody.